All right, big one today. Next up in the Heat Check series is one of the top players in the 2025 NBA draft class, Rutgers guard Dylan Harper. In the past with this series, I've often saved the best for last, so I'm switching it up here in getting on Dylan Harper, and in the coming days Ace Bailey, so early. These are two prospects who I really feel we need to let breathe over the next few months, so I'm dropping these videos with the likely end of their collegiate careers, barring appearances in the NIT. Harper is a 6'6" lefty guard who played his sole season with Rutgers and is the son of NBA standout Ron Harper. A longtime 5-star recruit, per RSEI he ranked as the number 3 player in the 2024 high school class, but for most of this draft cycle has ranked just behind Duke's Cooper Flagg at number 2 per most experts. Across his 29 games, he averaged an elite 19.4 points, 4 assists, 4.6 rebounds, and 1.4 steals, shooting 48% overall, 33% from 3, and 75% at the line on good volume. He'll be just over 19 on draft night. Here's how Heat Check works. I'm going to identify one draft prospect and grade them on what I believe to be the most generally important skills and aspects of their game: athleticism, scoring, defense, passing and playmaking, and overall feel for the game. After those 5, I'll grade one additional skill relative to that prospect that I think is going to have the biggest effect on their stock. That will be deemed the swing skill. Each skill will be graded on the Heat Check chart with ranges from freezing all the way to scorching. When that's all said and done, I'll divvy out one final overall score. Starting with Dylan Harper's athleticism, I would grade him moderate to good. He is a prototypical big guard, standing at 6'6", with a fairly solid build and what looks to be a plus wingspan, probably sitting just a few inches shy of 7 foot. Vertically, he's not elite, but certainly not bad, boasting 12 dunks in his season at Rutgers, and getting some air on a myriad of finishing moves. The real draw of his athleticism comes with his swift and coordinated movement, typically with the ball in hand. He's not the speediest or fastest accelerator, but he does have a decent first step and some quickness to his game, and when you pair this with his elite ball handling skills, it makes him a downhill force. Add on really great body control and his dash of verticality, and you've got a star. Harper has positional size and physicality, and a nice baseline of athleticism across the board, but his game isn't driven by athleticism, hence the warm grade here. Moving on to Harper's scoring, I've graded him scorching, as I'm not sure what else you can call his offensive season with the Scarlet Knights if not scorching. Let's start with the simple on-paper stuff. Harper averaged a blistering 19.4 points on 48% shooting, already elite numbers for a guard and a freshman at that. He hit on 33% of his 5 threes per game, not terrible, and shot 75% from the free throw line on nearly 6 attempts per game. Elite volume. To pigeonhole Harper to an archetype, he'd be a ball-dominant offensive engine whose game hinges on ball handling and a downhill attack. Over half of his total points came at the rim, where he shot a gaudy 67%, using that aforementioned size, body control, and tons of touch to get the ball through the ring by any means necessary. He is relentless in getting downhill, using that swiftness, nearly every dribble move available, and plenty of spin moves to create the little space he needs to score. Most simply, he's probably the best equipped driving prospect I've scouted in my 3 years doing these videos. He can create with speed, he can create with strength, and when both of those fail, he can fall back on his timeless handle. He creates great driving angles and can finish simply or in circus-like fashion. The vast majority of his offensive game is subject to ball screens, where he created excellent per synergy, finishing with 56% true shooting in those situations. With his snappy handle and athletic tools, he's a maestro at navigation and projects to be the same, if not better, at the NBA level. The other 2 areas of his game that, along with the PNR, make up a whopping 86% of his collegiate points were transition play and spotting up, where he graded good and excellent per synergy respectively. So not only can you use him very effectively on ball, but he's also a player keen on picking up the pace and running the floor, and has the ability to hit shots when stationary. He ranked good and hit 38% of his shots in isolation, an area that points to that not overly exciting athleticism, but that's also something that could likely come with time given his general scoring will improve, and he could one day have the ability to bully smaller guard defenders with legit size. We'll touch more on Harper's range scoring more later in the video, but fine averages on nice volume and a synergy grade of good on all his jumpers point to easy 3-level potential. Of course, it isn't all sunshine and rainbows regarding Harper's scoring. I think there's certainly some refinement to be had, especially in the shot selection and decision-making aspects. Regardless of those ticky-tack arguments, Harper is one of the more gifted scoring prospects we've seen in the past few years, and the stats and eye test reflect that tenfold. I'd fully expect him to be able to carry the load of an NBA offense in year 1 and do it really well down the line. For Harper's defense, we've gone with the warm grade, and more specifically, I'd call this out to be average and really kind of unspecial, which is perfectly fine for a player who will carry such an offensive burden. Harper nabbed a decent 1.4 steals per game with half a block too, more so gambling in lanes and turning that to offense than purely stopping at the point of attack. He finished with a 2.1 defensive box plus minus, as well as a 2.6 steal percentage, which isn't a great number. As with any prospect, there's both highs and lows to Harper's defense. The highs include some real instincts packed within his 6'6 frame, making for some seldom defensive playmaking. He's better at blowing up ball screens than given credit for, and the lows include pretty general things like sloppy closeouts, off-ball inattentiveness, and a lack of general pressure. Overall, I'd say his defensive impact lands somewhere in the middle. Luckily, Harper's size and general care factor give him a good baseline here, which is all he'll need considering his impact on offense. He does struggle somewhat with quicker guards, but on the flip side might be able to size up occasionally. Teams shouldn't and won't expect him to be a stopper, but I think he offers a nice mix of on and off ball defense for a lead guard. Any NBA team will gladly take a defensive wash in Harper's case, which I think he is. For Dylan Harper's passing and playmaking, I've gone with a hot grade. I think Harper's a currently good passer and playmaker with the ability to become a great one down the road. Harper's raw stats are 4 assists per game to 2.4 turnovers per game for a 1.7 assist to turnover ratio, as well as a really great 27% assist percentage and a fine 12.7 turnover percentage. It wasn't a given coming into his freshman season that he could be a legitimate lead guard, opposed to a combo guard, and I think he proved he has enough in the passing playmaking bag that he can indeed run an offense singularly. Despite some shiny scoring numbers, Harper's passing and playmaking headline would read of unselfishness, good feel for the game, and cerebrality, as well as the occasional flare-up of some star-level stuff. For the most part, Harper's passing game is simple, drawing doubles, making the right read in the pick and roll, finding shooters in space. And while I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, I think it does limit his pure ceiling in this area some, hence the hot grade. He just doesn't right now seem to have the velocity, accuracy, or ambition to make truly absurd plays. He does, however, have good vision, he stays poised, he has some creativity off the dribble, and is capable of every single pick and roll pass with the height to see over defenders. Really invaluable for his specific skill set. The biggest question surrounding Harper's passing would be, can he pair it with his scoring ability and parlay that into playmaking, where at the drop of a hat he's able to generate offense for his team, and I think that will be the case to some degree, maybe just not the highest available given the simplicity he's displayed so far in college. In terms of Harper's unquantifiable feel for the game, I've gone with hot, as I again think this is a place Harper excels relative to the middle of the pack. He's obviously got that it factor, becoming one of the top high school recruits in the nation, signing on to play with Rutgers, and putting up one of the more audacious stat lines we've seen from a freshman in years. You can see it in his counter after counter and getting downhill, the truly elite finishing, the fact he poured on 37 and 36 points back to back. Similarly to his passing, I don't think he's one of one in this category, but rather he has such a nice blend of everything, size, skill, savviness, athleticism, poise, etc., that it gives him such a great floor and an obtainable high ceiling too. For Dylan Harper's swing skill, I've gone with shooting, and I've graded it warm as I think he'll be a perfectly respectable ranged shooter and potentially even a threat down the line in this area. As with any player who looks to get downhill often, the threat of a three ball would blow his game wide open. It causes defenders to hesitate, gives him even more options, and would grant even more scoring juice to an already potent concoction. Let's start with the basics. Harper finished shooting 33% on over 5 attempts per game with Rutgers. Not elite numbers, but honestly, given his archetype, a pretty solid one. I think he's got confidence and fine form, albeit some lefty funk. His right hand placement is slightly more on top of the ball, and he's got somewhat of a low release, but no major concerns, and I'd expect some tweaks from NBA shooting coaches to get him right. His pure numbers indicate he's a pretty good stationary shooter, 44% overall spotting up and 39% catch and shoot, but much rougher off the dribble at 29%, which is to be expected. In order to become a true number one scoring option at the NBA level, which I think is on the table, maybe more for him than anyone else in this class, he's gonna have to add that dribble pull-up game to his arsenal. If not, teams will be able to play the drive 24/7, and that's gonna severely limit his options overall. But again, I'm optimistic regarding Harper's 3-level scoring potential. The numbers aren't abysmal, I like the indicators. I don't think he'll be some purely effective off-ball weapon, but I don't think he'll be a net negative without the ball in hand either, and I expect his OTD numbers to rise in the next few years. The grade. I've given Dylan Harper a grade of 9.1. That'll be good for the third highest I've dished out in the last 3 drafts. I think he's a phenomenal basketball prospect and one that's likely bound for NBA stardom in some capacity. Aside from the obvious factors that make Harper great, I myself am keen on positional size, feel for the game, and especially players whose best skills are driving and finishing. I think it's such a pivotal building block to long-term success, and Harper has that in bounds with potential for growth in other areas. I feel pretty certain based off his pedigree and the year he had with Rutgers that he will end up as my number 2 prospect in this draft. A decent amount of the allure behind Harper is the obviously high offensive ceiling with no real dark mark on other facets of his game. Is he gonna jump out of the gym, be first team all defense, or hit 6 threes a night? Of course not. But does he truly hurt you in those areas? Not really. In summation, I think Dylan Harper is a lower end tier 1 prospect who will be game changing to an NBA franchise the second he steps foot there. That's it for this one. Let me know what you think of Dylan Harper, what you grade him, where you draft him, drop who you want to see in the next heat check. Spoiler alert, it's gonna be Ace Bailey. We'll see you next time.